Welcome to this video where we're going to try help one of our viewers, the real Tomahawk, with the question. You can see the video that it's coming from. Is Helen and Javan the same? Now we're going to learn why it's a fair question to ask. Let's first make sure we all know who Javan is. So if we go to Genesis 10, the Bible of Nations, we can see Javan is a son of Japheth. So we're speaking about the three sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and we see that Javan is a son of Japheth. Now if we go to the work of Josephus Flavius, now there might be different thoughts about Josephus out there. Is he trustworthy? Is he reliable? Sorry, was he reliable with this work? But once he created this work and linked the sons of Noah with nations or peoples, it then becomes a very important source that's influenced a lot of other researchers. And we see here that Josephus says that the Grecians, all the Grecians, derive from Javan. Okay, so now if we go to the page on Helen, so now we're going into the mythology, the Greek mythology, the Roman mythology, and we see that it says on the page of Helen that he's the ancestor of the Greek peoples. So if the Greek peoples are coming from Helen, but Josephus is saying that all the Greeks come from Javan, doesn't mean that Helen and Javan are one and the same. Now we're going to research this by going back in the family tree of the mythology to try to see what's going on here. Okay, so if we go to the page on Helen, we see he is the child of Deucalion or Zeus. But we're going to follow the family tree of Deucalion, going backwards. So if we go to the page on Deucalion, we see he was the son of Prometheus. If we go to the page on Prometheus, we see that he was one of the Titans, that he was best known for defying the Olympian gods by taking fire from them and giving it to humanity. So like a champion of humanity. And we see that Prometheus, his father was Iapetus. Now I know there's a lot of details here if you're new to this, completely new to this, but just try to keep it simple that we are following this family tree backwards. And now we get to Iapetus. Now the interesting thing is the similarity of the names. So we see Iapetus or Japheth, and it says here Iapetus was linked to Japheth, one of the sons of Noah. And we can see the similarity of the names. But are we really dealing with Japheth here? Is Japheth really the same as Iapetus? So we're going to investigate this. Okay, so now we've got to Iapetus. We came across another very interesting work by Sir Isaac Newton, his Chronicle. And if we read this part here, it says, the Greeks tell us that Iapetus was the father of Atlas, and Bocart derives Iapetus and Neptune from the same original. So it's saying that Iapetus is the same person as Neptune, or the same god as Neptune. And if we go to the page on Neptune, we see that Neptune is an equivalent of Poseidon. So if you are completely new to this, what we're saying is that the Greeks worshipped a god called Poseidon, and the Romans worshipped the same god, but called that god Neptune. So now we get to Poseidon. Okay, this is where it gets important. So Poseidon, king of the sea, member of the 12 Olympians. Now we're going to go to the father of Poseidon, and we see that the father of Poseidon is Kronos. Now if we just keep this simple and see what is this actually saying, what is this family tree actually saying, and using the research from our viewer, okay, so the viewer actually, you could say, almost provides a solution, but then doesn't actually focus on what's actually being said and the importance of it. So we can see that the viewer has sent other comments, very detailed comments, and even says somewhere that are we chasing rabbits? Am I chasing rabbits with this research? And I have studied the mythologies quite a lot, and I can understand why sometimes it feels like you could be chasing rabbits. But I just want to show you how there is a way of coming away from this, let's say, the study, and actually having something that makes sense, that you can work with. It doesn't have to be endless rabbit holes. Okay, so the viewer says Ham is Kronos. So if we go back to the table of nations, we see that Ham is the son of Noah. So in the research from the viewer, he's saying Ham is Chronos. But then it gets confusing with the viewer's research, because not actually focusing on how important that connection is and what you can do with that. Because once you say Ham is Chronos, now we're going to go backwards, because back the way we came, if you know what I'm trying to say. So if Chronos is Ham, let's go backwards. Okay, so Chronos is Ham. We know that if we wait for the page to load, that so now we're saying, according to the research of the viewer and what's being put forward, that Chronos is Ham. And then if we go to the family tree, we see that, I'll just go down to the children. We see that the children is Poseidon, okay? So that would mean that Poseidon, this famous Greek god, is a Hamite. Because, no, but if we say it as a question, we're not saying that it's guaranteed, we're saying in this research, in this question, that would make Poseidon a Hamite, because his father would be Ham. And if we go through this quite quickly, remember we said that Poseidon is the same as Neptune, so that means Neptune would also be a Hamite. And if we go to the research of Sir Isaac Newton, where he connects Iapetus with Neptune, if they're one and the same, that would make Iapetus a Hamite. And if we go to the page on Iapetus, so this is important now, because it's saying, well, what we're saying is that Iapetus would be a Hamite. So then it can't be Japheth. You see that? So they're trying to link these names because of similarity. But if this is a Hamite family tree, then it can't be Japheth. And we'll try to speak in the end of the video about why people could be trying to make this connection. Is it really just honest mistakes, or is there something more devious to it or deceptive? So that would, if we keep going, so Prometheus would be a Hamite. And think about what it's saying here about Prometheus being a champion of humanity. And fire is a symbol, it can be connected to civilization and illumination, knowledge. And then think about the Bible story after the flood. And yeah, I think, does this actually make sense what it's saying, that we're following the Hamites? Okay, so Justinian would be a Hamite. So now we're really getting into the interesting part, because it's saying that the Greeks come from Helen. But Helen would also be a Hamite, because it's the same family tree. So the Greek peoples coming from Ham. But Josephus says that the Greeks are derived from Javan, who's the son of Japheth. And now it seems like it doesn't make sense again. But I just wanted to show you how, once you make this connection, Ham is Chronos, you need to focus on what you're actually saying. And it's the fact that the mythology is a family tree. And hopefully you can see that you don't need to make it too complicated and try to figure everything out. That you can actually come away with something that you can work with, that's not too hard to digest, that it's a family tree, and it could be a royal line that's going back to Ham. So what I would like to do is put a video into this one, which speaks about the Grecians and Greek and maps. I think I've got another question here, or viewer comments. Let's go down. Also asking about this. Javan is Greece. It's literally the name for Greece in Hebrew. So I think that this viewer might be slightly criticizing the video, but I'm going to add this video. We're going to listen to it now, because I think it will build a nice foundation, and then we'll come back and speak more about this. Welcome to this video, where we're going to try summarize some of these short videos we've released this week by speaking of Javan, son of Japheth. And we're going to be speaking about maps and the table of nations that we're given from Genesis chapter 10, the descendants of Noah and their descendants as well. And many scholars throughout the centuries have, tried to identify these descendants of Noah with different tribes and nations, trying to, see what happened to them and where did they go to, and then also to try create maps, to try use this table of nations to create a map. And we're going to look at a few examples of these maps that we've been given. This is the first one. So now this is trying to, use the table of nations, so Bible history, and then match it to the geography and to regions and to also to peoples. And now I've highlighted this one here because we want to focus on Javan, son of Japheth, but I also want to speak generally about these maps first. So to me, it just seems that we've got a lot of information, let's say, squashed or tried to fit into this region. Many different descendants of Noah. Let's look at another example. So this one, we see these large spheres, but the actual information of these descendants, it's very much centered in this region. And to me, I'm going to say that it almost feels like it's squashed to make it fit in here. But we do see one exception, and that's Tarshish. We see Tarshish is outside of this these spheres. And the reason why that's there, if you haven't watched those videos yet, is because of this kingdom called Tartessos on the Iberian Peninsula, a semi-mythological kingdom. So that's why Tarshish is there, because Tarshish is very strongly connected to the Iberian Peninsula. So here's the exception to this, whereas all these other sons will try to, fit into this region. And we'll look at one more example. So this example as well, we see how it's very much centered here in this region. But what about these other regions of the world where there's no information, there's no sons put here? So is this a fair, or let's say an accurate representation of the sources and the information that's out there? Now I've just created a map for just 3 sons of Javan that we've covered: Elisha, Tarshish, and Kittim. So we haven't covered Rodonim yet, but we've seen that we do have connections with other regions, because we had Elisha connected with Portugal and also with Sicily and Italy because of these Aeolian islands that we spoke about. And we also had sources connecting Kittim with the Romans, and we've already spoken about Tarshish with Tartessos. So now we can see, when we actually look at the sources and look for the information, we're getting a bit of a different picture, because let's just focus in on that map again with Javan. So notice this, this region that we've highlighted, and then try and imagine that on our map. So if we go back, so we'd be looking at a region, if you can see my cursor like this would be the size of the territory for Javan. But then compare it to the size of our shape or sphere, it's much, much larger. And does it not make more sense? And let's read the book of Jubilees to see how it describes the territory for Javan. It says, "And for Javan came forth the 4th portion of every island, and the islands which are towards the border of Lod." So I just want to focus on this part where it says the 4th portion of every island. So every island, to me that sounds like we should be looking for descendants of Javan in more than one location. Many different islands, or maybe we could even say countries, and the 4th portion, so that they wouldn't be inhabiting it by themselves. And we can see that with our map, because we can see how Elisha and Tarshish could be sharing the Iberian Peninsula with other tribes, and Kittim could be sharing the Italian peninsula with other tribes. And then we can see how the book of Jubilees makes sense, that these descendants are going to be inhabiting many different islands, but sharing them with other tribes. So what do you think about this picture? Does it make more sense? Does it better fit with the Jubilees description and showing the influence of Javan when we compare it to what we've been presented with by people that have used Genesis 10, trying to create these maps? And why is it why does it seem like it's squashed to fit into this region? So that could be because of the Holy Land, but it could also be because of what your view about Noah's Ark is, where you think Noah's Ark came to rest as like that important starting point after the flood. That also could influence how you put maps together and do the geography. So it's important that we're looking for the truth. So we have to look at the information, look at the sources, and try to treat it fairly. But why have the scholars focused and centered in on this region so much. And when we look at the information, it does seem that there is a different picture out there. Okay, so now we're back to the video where we're trying to answer these questions, or this question. So why could that video be important? If we first think about what we presented with for the Greek world, ancient Greece, it says here 750 BC. So we think about this Greek world that we presented with, and then go to a bigger map of the Mediterranean. So what we taught is that this region here would be ancient Greece. But if that video is on the right track, we could be learning that the territory of Javan could be a wider territory encompassing a lot of the Mediterranean. And if we think about that, does it then actually make sense with what Josephus is saying? So obviously now this is going to be a theory or a question. If Javan, the territory for Javan, was predominantly the Mediterranean, could it make sense with what we can look at now? Because with the research from the viewer, there's another interesting thing that comes up. I want to see if I've got it highlighted. Okay, so Kronos or Ham, king of Assyria and Persia, then Italy. So that's what stands out here for our video. Is it true that Ham also ruled over Italy? So if we go to the map of the Mediterranean, so this is the modern country of Italy. So did the Hamites start to invade and then rule over parts of Europe? So Ham is traditionally connected with Africa, but was there an invasion and Hamite rule over parts of Europe? So if you think about that, with all we've said so far, that the Grecians could be coming from Ham. So now it would mean that the Grecians are coming into Europe, but we're saying that the Greeks are Hamite. So how can this make sense? So this is just the way I see it, the way I'm able to process it in my mind, so I can go away and say, okay, I'm quite happy with that. I can leave that research, or yeah, it's not going to trouble me. Because what I think Josephus could be saying is that this territory of Javan became dominated by the Greeks, and then maybe because of conquest and being absorbed, all the descendants of Javan, we could say, were Greeks because they're living in the Greek world. But it doesn't mean that the Greeks actually come from Javan. So I hope that makes sense. So if you watched that video and you really took the information in, if the descendants of Javan were spread over the Mediterranean, and then the Grecians, these Hamites, started to invade, conquer, rule over and assimilate, then the descendants of Javan may lose their identity. And when it comes to the time of Josephus Flavius, then it seems that all the descendants of Javan are Grecians because they're living in the Greek world. So is it really true what we've been presented with, that this is the Greek world? So hopefully that makes sense. If you are not quite sure what we're still saying, please leave a comment with what you're not sure about. But I think that's for me, that's a good way to try make sense of this question and this confusion. And let me know, the real Tomahawk, if that helps. In this short part of the video, I want to come back to what we were speaking about with Iapetus and the similarity with Japheth. And there could be honest mistakes where people just see the similarity of the names and say, well, that could be Japheth. But with our theory that we're putting forward in this video, they're not the same. But why could there be actually deception with some of these connections? Let's speak about that. So could there be an attempt to connect Japheth with Iapetus in a way that would try hide something, hide a family tree, hide a royal bloodline? So we think about that with the map. With the Hamites dominating the ancient world and invading, coming into Europe, could there be an attempt to try and hide this history so that we don't think about the Greeks as Hamites, but we think about the Greeks as being descended from Japheth? and then you use the mythology and the Bible to try create something that people might think, well, maybe that's true, but is it really true? So just a short part, just to say we have to be careful that just because things look close doesn't mean that it's one and the same thing. In this final part of the video, I'd like to come back to something so that we don't leave it unanswered and viewers aren't left wondering or guessing if they're not sure what was meant. We're going to speak about Nimrod, who became a mighty warrior on the earth. This is Genesis 10, so still the same chapter. Now, this is very important, I think, because who else gets such a mention as Nimrod on this page? We see there's a lot of details given here for Nimrod. So the Bible is saying that this is important. But now if we go to the work of Josephus Flavius to get his account of this, it says, "Now it was Nimrod who excited them to such an affront and contempt of God. He was the grandson of Ham, the son of Noah, a bold man and of great strength of hand. He persuaded them not to ascribe it to God, as if it was through his means they were happy, but to believe that it was their own courage which procured their happiness. He also gradually changed the government into tyranny, seeing no other way of turning men from the fear of God, but to bring them into a constant dependence on his power." So what we can take from this, I think, is that it was the Hamites who were dominating in this ancient world, that were ruling. The power was with the Hamites. So then does not make sense when we think about what the Bible is saying, and we think about this map, how we know Ham's connected with Africa, but is that really the whole story for the Hamites? Was there an invasion and further conquest and assimilation of peoples? And in the ancient world, even coming towards, let's say, the time of Jesus, that sort of period, people still worshipping these gods. But were the gods actually Hamites? And what we've also been speaking about on this channel is, are all the mythologies around the world connected? Speaking about the same gods, saying similar stories. And when the Greeks worshipping Poseidon, is it really worship of powerful Hamite kings or leaders or emperors or rulers? So let me know if that all makes sense in a way that we're able to come away from this with something that makes sense and works with the Bible, which is important as our main source, as our authority. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I look forward to seeing if there's any comments. Thank you to those that are still following the channel and wait for videos or look out for videos, and thanks to those who also like the videos, and hopefully we get to see you in another video. Oh, and also thank you to the Real Tomahawk for sending these comments so that we can continue to learn together and try get to the truth of our history and our past.